The auction hall smelled like rust and old dreams. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy packed the massive chamber, their voices mixing into a noise that sounded like a storm. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had bodies made of light. They all came here for the same reason, to buy ships that nobody wanted anymore. Tejo stood at the back of the crowd. He was human, 32 years old, with tired eyes and oil stains on his jacket. Compared to the aliens around him, he looked small, weak, unimportant. That was fine with him. He had learned long ago that looking unimportant had its advantages. His sister Yuna stood beside him, her arms crossed. She was 4 years younger, with short black hair and a face that showed exactly what she was thinking. Right now, she was thinking this was a waste of time. "We should leave," she whispered. "Nothing good here today. Just garbage." His eyes moved across the auction floor, studying each ship that floated behind the energy barriers. Most were exactly what Yuna said: garbage. Broken freighters, burned-out cruisers, ships that had seen better days 100 years ago. But Tejo was not looking at those ships. He was looking at the thing in the corner, the thing everyone else was ignoring. It was dark, silent, shaped like something between a whale and a teardrop, with a hull that looked more like skin than metal. No lights, no power signatures. The auction display called it Lot 447, biological class vessel, origin unknown, non-functional. The aliens called it the corpse. Broker Velen, the auctioneer, was an insectoid creature with 4 arms and eyes like black marbles. He ran this market with cold efficiency. When he reached Lot 447, his clicking voice carried a tone of boredom. Next item, biological class vessel, ancient design. All scans show 0 function, 0 power, 0 value. His mandibles made a sound like laughter. Starting bid, 100 credits. Anyone? Anyone at all? Silence filled the hall. A few aliens laughed. One of them, a tall creature with blue skin and golden eyes, pointed at the ship and said something in a language Tejo did not understand. The aliens around him laughed harder. 50 credits, Broker Velen said, lowering the price. Come now, 50 credits for, well, for whatever this is. More silence, more laughter. 20 credits. Final offer before we move to the next lot. Yuna grabbed Tejo's arm. She had seen the look on his face. She knew that look too well. "No," she said firmly. "Tejo, no. That thing is dead. Every scanner in the galaxy says it is dead. You cannot fix dead." Tejo pulled his arm free gently. He raised his hand. 12 credits, he called out. Every eye in the auction hall turned to look at him. The laughter stopped. For a moment, there was only silence, and then the laughter came back, twice as loud as before. Broker Velen's black eyes focused on Tejo. His mandibles clicked with what might have been amusement or disgust. 12 credits from the human. Does anyone wish to outbid? Nobody did. Why would they? The ship was worthless. Everyone knew it. Sold, Broker Velen announced. Lot 447 goes to the human for 12 credits. May you find some use for your tomb. The crowd moved on. The auction continued. But Tejo stayed still, staring at the dark shape in the corner. Yuna stood beside him, her face tight with frustration. 12 credits, she muttered. That is 12 credits we needed for fuel, for food, for repairs on our own ship. And you spent it on that thing. You do not see it, Tejo said quietly. See what? It is a corpse. The broker said it himself. Every alien species in the known galaxy has tried to interface with biological ships like this one. They all failed. The technology is dead. The species that made them is dead. There is nothing to see. Tejo finally looked at his sister. His eyes were calm, but something burned behind them. something she had seen before, in the moments before he did something either brilliant or incredibly stupid. The ship is not dead, Yuna. It is sleeping. How can you possibly know that? He did not answer. He could not explain it, not in words that made sense. When he had first seen the ship on the display screen, something had happened. A feeling, a pull, like hearing a song from very far away, too quiet to understand, but too beautiful to ignore. The ship was waiting. He was certain of it. Waiting for something. Waiting for someone. 3 hours later, Taeho stood alone in the loading bay where his purchase had been delivered. The biological ship sat in the darkness, massive and silent. Up close, it was even stranger than it had looked in the auction hall. The hull was not metal at all. It was something organic, like the shell of some enormous sea creature. Patterns ran across its surface, lines and curves that might have been veins, or circuits, or something else entirely. Taeho reached out and touched it. The surface was warm, not hot, but warm, like living skin. He pressed his palm flat against it and closed his eyes. Nothing happened. No lights, no sounds, no movement. But somewhere deep inside, in a place beyond hearing, Taeho felt something, a pulse, faint and slow, like a heart that had almost forgotten how to beat. "I know you are in there," he whispered. "I do not know what you are. I do not know why everyone else has given up on you. But I am not everyone else." He paused. The pulse came again, just slightly stronger than before. "My name is Taeho. I fix broken things. It is what I do." He smiled, though no one could see it. "And you are the most broken thing I have ever found." Behind him, the loading bay doors opened. Yuna walked in, carrying a bag of tools and wearing an expression of someone who had accepted her fate. "Fine," she said. "If we are doing this, we are doing this properly. But when this fails, and it will fail, you owe me dinner for a month." Taeho laughed softly. "Deal." Together, brother and sister stood before the sleeping giant. The galaxy had thrown it away. The auction had sold it for the price of a cheap meal. Every expert, every scanner, every advanced alien species had declared it worthless. But Taeho had learned something that the galaxy often forgot. Worthless and hopeless were not the same thing. Sometimes, the things that everyone else had given up on just needed someone stubborn enough to believe in them. He touched the ship's hull again and felt that faint, distant pulse. "Let us wake you up," he said. 3 weeks passed. The ship sat in Taeho's salvage dock like a patient that refused to wake from a coma. Every day, Taeho worked on it. Every night he fell asleep beside it, too tired to walk back to his quarters. And every morning, he woke up and started again. Yuna watched her brother grow thin. She watched dark circles form under his eyes. She watched him talk to the ship as if it could hear him, and she began to worry that she was losing him to a dead machine. "You need to stop," she told him one evening. "This is killing you." Taeho wiped sweat from his forehead. His hands were covered in some kind of organic fluid that had leaked from the ship's hull. It smelled like the ocean. "I am close," he said. "I can feel it." "Feel what?" "Taeho, you are not making sense. You have run every diagnostic tool we own. You have tried every power source in our inventory. Nothing works. The ship does not respond." "It responds to me." "What do you mean?" Taeho placed his hand on the ship's hull. The surface moved slightly under his touch, like skin twitching in sleep. "It does that sometimes now," he said quietly. "Only when I touch it. Only for me." Yuna stared at the small movement. She had no words. The next day, a visitor arrived at their dock. His name was Jisoo, a xenobiologist who had studied alien life forms for 15 years. He was 35, quiet, and very serious. He owed Taeho a favor from years ago, and Taeho had finally called it in. Jisoo spent 6 hours examining the ship. He used instruments Taeho had never seen before. He took samples, he ran tests, and when he finished, he sat down heavily on a cargo crate and stared at the vessel with wide eyes. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. "A biological class ship," Taeho replied. "That is what the auction record said." "No," Jisoo shook his head slowly. "This is a symbiont class vessel. I have only read about these in ancient texts. The species that built them disappeared 10,000 years ago. Nobody knows what happened to them." "Symbiont?" Yuna asked. "What does that mean?" "It means the ship does not just carry a pilot. It bonds with a pilot. Their nervous systems connect. They become one being." Jisoo looked at Taeho. "That is why no alien species can use these ships. The bonding requires a specific type of brain, one that can adapt, change, and grow new connections." "And alien brains cannot do that?" Taeho asked. "Most alien species evolved very specialized brains. Their neural pathways are fixed, efficient, and powerful. But they cannot change easily. They cannot form new connections the way—" He stopped. His eyes widened. "The way human brains can." Silence filled the dock. "Humans have the most adaptable brains in the known galaxy," Jisoo continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Other species see this as a weakness. They call us unfinished, primitive, chaotic. But for this ship," he pointed at the vessel, "for this ship, we might be the only species that can bond with it." Taeho felt his heart beating faster. The faint pull he had felt since the auction was stronger now, like a rope tightening between him and the sleeping giant. "How do I do it?" he asked. "How do I bond with it?" Jisoo stood and walked to the ship's hull. He pressed against it in several places until a section of the surface shifted, revealing an opening, like a mouth. "Inside there will be a core chamber. At the center, you will find a bonding node. Touch it, and the ship will try to connect with you." He turned to face Taeho, his expression grave. "But I must warn you, this process was designed for a species that no longer exists. We do not know what it will do to a human mind. It could also destroy you." "Taeho, no." Yuna stepped forward, grabbing her brother's arm. "This is madness. You heard him. It could kill you." Taeho looked at his sister. He saw the fear in her eyes, and he loved her for it. But he also felt the pull from the ship, stronger than ever. It was not just a machine calling to him. It was something alive, something lonely, something that had waited in the dark for 10,000 years. "I have to try," he said softly. "If I do not, no one ever will, and this ship will stay asleep forever." Yuna's grip tightened for a moment, then slowly released. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "If you die," she said, "I will never forgive you." Taeho smiled. "I know." He walked toward the opening in the hull. The inside of the ship was dark, but as he entered, faint lights began to glow along the walls. They pulsed like bioluminescence, like the glow of deep-sea creatures. The ship knew he was there. Taeho walked deeper into the vessel. The corridors curved and twisted in ways that made no sense, but somehow he knew exactly where to go. The pull guided him, gentle but certain. Finally, he reached the core chamber. It was a round room with walls that looked like the inside of a heart. At the center stood a pillar of organic material, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move. At the top of the pillar was a node, shaped like an open hand. The bonding node. Taeho approached it slowly. His own hand was shaking. His mind screamed at him to stop, to turn back, to listen to his sister. But his heart knew something his mind did not. This was what he was meant to do. He reached out and placed his palm on the node. Pain, light, sound, everything hit him at once, flooding his brain like a river breaking through a dam. He saw stars being born. He saw worlds dying. He saw a species of beautiful beings piloting ships like this one, flying through the cosmos with joy in their hearts. And then he saw them disappear, one by one, until only the ships remained, drifting alone in the endless dark. He felt the ship's loneliness. 10,000 years of silence, 10,000 years of waiting for someone, anyone, to hear its voice. And then, finally, he heard it. Not words, something deeper. Feelings and images and memories, all flowing into him like water filling an empty vessel. The ship was grateful. The ship was afraid. The ship was alive. Taeho opened his eyes. The core chamber was filled with light now, every surface glowing with warmth. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat, no longer slow and faint, but strong and steady. Outside, Yuna and Jisoo watched as the entire ship transformed. The dark hull began to glow. The organic veins lit up like rivers of starlight. The vessel that had been called the corpse shuddered, and for the first time in 10,000 years, it breathed. Taeho stood in the core chamber, tears running down his face, but he was smiling. "Hello," he whispered to the ship. "I think I will call you Hanel. It means sky." The ship's response washed over him like a warm embrace. It had been waiting so long. Now, at last, it was no longer alone. The bonding was not easy. Nobody had warned Taeho that it would feel like dying and being born at the same time. For 3 days he lay in the core chamber, lost between his own mind and the mind of the ship. Hanuel fed him memories that were not his own. Ancient wars fought in the hearts of dying stars. The faces of pilots who had flown this ship before him, each one loved, each one lost. The moment of the last pilot's death, and the beginning of the long silence. Yuna stayed by the ship's entrance the entire time. She did not sleep. She barely ate. Jisoo tried to convince her to rest, but she refused. Her brother was inside that thing, and she would not leave until he came out. On the 4th day, Taeho walked out of the ship. He looked different, not in any way Yuna could describe with words. His body was the same, his face was the same, but something behind his eyes had changed. He seemed older somehow, as if he had lived 1,000 years in those 4 days. "Are you okay?" Yuna whispered. Taeho looked at her. For a moment, his eyes seemed unfocused, like he was seeing something far away. Then he blinked, and he was her brother again. "I am okay," he said. His voice was rough, as if he had not used it in a very long time. "I just need to adjust." The adjustment took weeks. Taeho found himself thinking in ways that were not quite human. He would look at the stars and know their names without ever learning them. He would feel the pull of gravity like a texture against his skin. Sometimes, in the middle of a conversation, he would pause and listen to something only he could hear. Yuna tried to understand, but it was hard. Her brother was still in there. She could see him, but he was also something more now. Something connected to a being older than human civilization. "Are you sure this is what you want?" she asked him one night. They sat on the dock, looking at Hanuel's glowing hull. "You could try to break the bond. Jisoo might know a way." Taeho shook his head slowly. "It is not like that. The bond is not a chain. It is more like a conversation. Hanuel does not control me. We share, we talk, we learn from each other." He smiled, a real smile this time. "And honestly, for the first time in my life, I do not feel alone inside my own head." Yuna did not fully understand, but she accepted it. That was what family did. To make Hanuel truly functional, they needed help. Modern navigation, communication, and life support systems had to be integrated with the ship's ancient organic framework. That required an engineer with skills far beyond what Taeho or Yuna possessed. They found Minji through an old contact in the salvage network. She was 40 years old, a former military engineer who had left the service after seeing too much war. Now she worked freelance, taking jobs that interested her and ignoring everything else. When she first saw Hanel, she stood in silence for 5 full minutes. "This is impossible," she finally said. "Symbiont ships are extinct. Everyone knows that." "Everyone is wrong," Taeho replied. Minji walked closer to the ship. She touched the hull, and her engineering mind began working immediately, analyzing the organic structure, imagining how modern systems could connect to it. "The challenge will be compatibility," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. "Organic tech and synthetic tech do not play well together, but if we create an interface layer, something that translates between the two." Triple. "Can you do it?" Yuna asked. Minji's eyes lit up with the fire of someone who had just been given the greatest puzzle of their life. "Give me 3 months," she said, "and a lot of coffee." It took 4 months. Minji worked tirelessly, designing systems that had never existed before. She failed more times than she succeeded, but each failure taught her something new. And slowly, piece by piece, Hanul began to accept the modifications. The ship resisted at first. It did not understand these strange metal things being attached to its body. But Taeho was there, explaining through their bond what each modification was for. Navigation to find their way, communication to talk to others, life support to keep the humans alive in the void. Hanul learned to trust Minji. It even began to help her, shifting its organic systems to make room for her designs. Finally, they were ready for the first test flight. Taeho sat in the core chamber, his hands resting on the bonding node. Yuna and Minji strapped themselves into seats that Minji had installed near the front of the ship. Jisoo watched from the dock, recording everything for his research. "Are you ready?" Yuna asked through the internal communication system. Taeho smiled. He did not need to speak. Through the bond, he simply asked Hanul to fly. The ship rose from the dock like a creature waking from a long dream. There was no roar of engines, no burst of flame. Hanul simply lifted, graceful and silent, and slipped into the darkness of space. Inside the ship, Yuna grabbed her seat as her stomach flipped. This did not feel like any ship she had ever piloted. There was no vibration, no sense of mechanical force. It felt like being carried by something alive. "This is incredible," Minji breathed. Taeho guided Hanul through the asteroid belt that surrounded their station. But the word guided was not quite right. He did not tell the ship where to go. He thought about where he wanted to be, and Hanul moved to make it happen. The ship did not fly through space like a normal vessel. It swam, bending and twisting around obstacles with impossible grace. An asteroid appeared directly in their path. In any other ship, they would have had to slow down, calculate a new course, adjust their trajectory. But Hanul simply curved around it, like water flowing past a stone. "The hull," Minji said, staring at her instruments. "It is changing. The ship is adjusting its shape to reduce drag. That should not be possible." But it was possible. For Hanul, it was natural. They flew for 3 hours before returning to the dock. By then, word had already begun to spread through the salvage network. The dead ship from the auction was alive. A human had bonded with it, and it could fly in ways that made even the most advanced alien vessels look clumsy. Far away, on Station Orbis 7, Broker Velen heard the news. His black eyes narrowed with fury. He had sold that ship for 12 credits. He had called it a corpse. And now a human, a primitive human, had turned his mistake into something extraordinary. He opened a secure channel and contacted the Dominion Hegemony, the most powerful alien coalition in the galaxy. They collected ancient technology. They hoarded it, studied it, kept it from younger species who they believed were not ready for such power. "I have information," Broker Velen said. A human has activated a symbiont-class vessel. On the other end of the channel, there was a long pause. Send us the location, a cold voice replied. We will handle this. The hegemony began assembling a fleet. And Teho, unaware of what was coming, flew through the stars with his sister, his engineer, and his ship. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The fleet arrived without warning. 12 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a perfect formation around Teho's salvage station. They were massive, each one 100 times the size of Hanuel, covered in weapons that could destroy moons. The Dominion hegemony had come to collect their prize. Teho felt them before he saw them. Through his bond with Hanuel, he sensed the cold metal of their ships, the hum of their power cores, the intent behind their arrival. Hanuel was afraid. It remembered what war felt like. We have incoming, Minji announced, her voice tight with tension. Hegemony warships, 12 of them. Yuna ran to the dock's communication array. A message was already waiting, broadcast on all frequencies. A face appeared on the screen. It belonged to Commander Dreth, a towering reptilian being with scales the color of dried blood and eyes like yellow fire. He commanded the hegemony's retrieval fleet, and he had taken more ancient technology from more species than anyone could count. Human, Dreth said, his voice deep and cold. You have something that does not belong to you. The symbiont vessel you call Hanuel is property of the elder races. You will surrender it immediately. Teho stood in the core chamber, his hand on the bonding node. He could feel Hanuel's fear, but beneath it, he also felt something else. Defiance. Hope. The ship did not want to be a weapon again. It did not want to be collected and stored in some vault, forgotten for another 10,000 years. Neither did Teho. He activated the communication system. Commander Dreth, my name is Teho. I purchased this ship legally at auction. It chose to bond with me. It is not your property. It is my partner. Dreth's scales shifted in a pattern that might have been amusement. Humans have been in space for less than 300 years. You are children. You do not understand what you have. The symbiont ships were weapons of the ancients, capable of destroying entire fleets. Such power cannot be trusted to a primitive species. I do not want to destroy anything. I just want to fly. That is not your choice to make. Dreth leaned forward, his yellow eyes burning. Surrender the ship, or we will take it by force. You have 10 minutes. The screen went dark. Yuna looked at Teho through the ship's internal sensors. Her face was pale but determined. We cannot fight 12 warships. We need to run. If we run, they will chase us, Minji said, and eventually they will catch us. Teho closed his eyes. Through the bond, he asked Hanuel a simple question. What do you want? The ship's response came as a flood of images and feelings. It showed him the Varus Nebula, a vast cloud of gas and unstable gravity wells that lay several light-years away. No conventional ship could navigate it. The gravity would tear them apart. The radiation would fry their systems. But Hanuel was not a conventional ship. Teho opened his eyes. Yuna, Minji, strap in. We are going through the Varus Nebula. Minji's jaw dropped. That is suicide. The gravity wells alone would crush any ship. Any normal ship, Teho agreed. But Hanuel does not navigate with computers. It feels space. It can find a path through. Yuna looked at her brother. She saw the certainty in his eyes. She had trusted him before, even when everyone said he was crazy. She would trust him again. Do it, she said. Teho asked Hanuel to fly. The ship launched from the dock like a bird escaping a cage. The hegemony fleet reacted immediately, their weapons powering up, their engines burning bright. Commander Dreth's voice roared across all frequencies. Disable that ship. Energy beams slice through space. missiles launched by the dozens. But Hanuel moved in ways no ship should be able to move, twisting and diving through the barrage like water through fingers. The organic hull healed the few hits that landed, the damage closing in seconds. Tejo felt everything. Every turn, every dodge, every close call. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. They reached the edge of the Varus Nebula, with 9 warships still in pursuit. 3 had fallen behind, too slow to keep up. But Commander Dreth's flagship was gaining, its engines far more powerful than anything Tejo had ever seen. "Entering the nebula now," Yuna announced. Her voice was steady, but Tejo could feel her fear through the ship's sensors. He wished he could tell her it would be okay, but he did not know if that was true. The nebula swallowed them whole. Inside, the universe became chaos. Gravity pulled at them from every direction. Radiation painted the darkness in colors that hurt to look at. Tejo's navigation instruments screamed warnings and then went silent, overwhelmed by the impossible data. But Tejo was not looking at instruments. He was feeling space through Hanuel's senses. The gravity was not a threat to be avoided. It was a texture to be read. The radiation was not danger. It was color, painting a map that only Hanuel could see. They flew deeper into the nebula. Behind them, hegemony ships began to fall. One was crushed by a gravity well. Another lost power and drifted into a cloud of radiation. The pursuing fleet dropped from 9 ships to 7, then 5, then 3. Only Commander Dreth's flagship remained. The warship was taking terrible damage, its hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere. His pride would not let him be defeated by a human in a ship that should have been scrap. "You cannot escape," Dreth transmitted, his voice distorted by the nebula's interference. "I will follow you to the end of the universe." Tahoe guided Hanuel to the heart of the nebula, where the gravity wells spiraled around a massive dead star. It was the most dangerous place in the entire region, and it was exactly where he needed to be. He stopped. Commander Dreth's flagship emerged from the chaos, battered but still armed, its weapons locked onto Hanuel. "Surrender now," Dreth commanded, "or die." Tahoe felt Hanuel's pain. The ship was wounded, exhausted from the chase. But it was not afraid anymore. It trusted its pilot. "Hanuel," Tahoe whispered, "show him what you can do." The ship unleashed something ancient. Energy poured through its organic hull, and for a moment, it glowed like a small sun. The weapons fire from Dreth's flagship slammed into Hanuel again and again, but the ship was changing, adapting. Its hull analyzed the energy, learned its pattern, and evolved to resist it. Within 30 seconds, Dreth's weapons were useless. Hanuel struck back, not to kill, but to end. A single pulse of energy, precisely aimed, disabled Dreth's flagship completely. The massive warship went dark, drifting helplessly in the nebula's heart. Tejo opened a channel. "Commander Dreth, your fleet is gone, your ship is dead. I could destroy you right now, but I will not. Because this ship is not a weapon, it is my partner, and we are not your enemy, unless you make us one." He broadcast the message across all frequencies, so every ship in the galaxy could hear. Then Hanuel turned and flew out of the nebula, carrying its crew toward the open stars. Behind them, Commander Dreth sat in his darkened bridge, surrounded by silent consoles and broken pride. He had underestimated the human. He would not make that mistake again. 6 months passed. The story of the human who bonded with the dead ship spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Some called Tejo a thief who had stolen what he did not deserve. Some called him a lucky fool who would soon destroy himself. But others, especially humans scattered across the stars, called him something else entirely. They called him Hope. On Station Orbis 7, The galactic salvage market continued its endless auctions. Ships came and went. Credits changed hands. But something had changed. When human traders walked through the auction halls now, the other species looked at them differently. Not with the same old contempt, but with something new. Curiosity, caution, and perhaps just a little bit of respect. Broker Velen was not at his usual post. After the news of what had happened to Commander Dreth's fleet, he had quietly resigned and left the station. Nobody knew where he went. Nobody cared. On a warm afternoon, a ship appeared at the edge of Orbis 7's sensor range. It was shaped like a teardrop, with a hull that pulsed with living light. The station's defense systems tracked it nervously, but no alarms sounded. This ship had earned the right to approach in peace. Hanul docked at the main platform. The crowds that gathered were larger than any auction had ever drawn. Thousands of beings from dozens of species packed the viewing areas, straining for a glimpse of the vessel that had humiliated the Dominion hegemony. The ship's hull opened, and Tejo stepped out. He looked different from the junk trader who had bought a worthless ship 6 months ago. His eyes carried a weight that had not been there before, but they also held a light that seemed to come from somewhere beyond himself. He wore simple clothes, nothing fancy. He had never cared about looking important. Yuna walked beside him, her hand resting on the weapon at her hip, not because she expected trouble, but because some habits were hard to break. Behind them came Minji and Jisoo, the engineer and the scientist who had helped make the impossible possible. They walked through the station together. The crowds parted before them, whispers following in their wake. Some aliens made signs of respect. Others turned away, unable to look at the human who had done what their own species could not. Near the old auction hall they stopped. A young alien child, barely taller than Tejo's waist, broke away from her parents and ran up to him. Her species had fur the color of morning sky, and eyes like polished silver. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. "Did you really wake up the sleeping ship?" Tejo knelt down to meet her eyes. "I did. But I did not do it alone. Hanul chose to wake up. I just helped it remember how." The child's mother hurried forward, embarrassed and afraid. But Tejo smiled at her kindly, and her fear faded. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of thanks, and led her daughter away. Yuna watched the exchange with a strange feeling in her chest. Pride, maybe, or something deeper. "You know this changes everything," she said quietly. "The hegemony will not forgive what happened. They will come for us again." "I know," Tejo replied. "But they will come no matter what we do. We showed the galaxy something they cannot unsee. Humans can bond with symbiont ships. That means everything they believed about us was wrong." He was right. In the months since the Varus Nebula, the hegemony had officially protested but taken no military action. Their scientists were too busy panicking. If humans could interface with technology that rejected every other species, what else might they be capable of? What other ancient secrets might humanity unlock? The hegemony's fear was the only reason Tahoe and his crew were still alive. But the real change was happening among humans. Word had spread about how Hanel had bonded with Tahoe, and now teams of human explorers were searching the galaxy for other dormant symbiont ships. The vessels had been abandoned on dead worlds, hidden in asteroid fields, lost in the dark spaces between stars. For 10,000 years, they had waited in silence. Now they were being found. Not every bonding succeeded. Some humans were not compatible, and some ships had been dead too long to save. But enough bonds formed to prove that Tahoe was not unique. Humans, with their chaotic and adaptable minds, could do what no other species could. The galaxy was watching, and it was afraid. That evening, Tahoe sat alone in Hanel's core chamber. The ship hummed around him, content and warm. Through their bond, he could feel its happiness. It had a family now, a crew, a purpose. After 10,000 years of loneliness, It was finally whole. "What do we do next?" Tejo asked. Though he did not need to speak aloud, the question traveled through the bond like a thought. Hanno's response came as images. Distant stars, unknown worlds, places where other ships might be sleeping, waiting for someone to wake them. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and they had barely scratched the surface. "More exploring then," Tejo said with a smile. "I thought you might say that." The door to the core chamber opened, and Yuna walked in. She had gotten better at moving through Hanno's organic corridors, though she still found them strange. She sat down beside her brother and looked at the glowing walls. "Minji wants to install better sensors before we leave," she said. "Jisoo wants to study the bond more. Apparently, your brain patterns have changed in ways that should not be possible." "I know. I can feel it sometimes. Like there is more room in my head than there used to be." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took her brother's hand. "I was wrong," she said softly. "At the auction, when you bid on this ship, I thought you were making a mistake. I thought you were throwing away money on a corpse." She squeezed his hand. "I have never been happier to be wrong." Tejo squeezed back. "You stayed with me anyway, even when you thought I was crazy." "Of course I did. You are my brother." She smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young girl who used to follow him around their parents' workshop, asking endless questions about ships and stars. "Besides, someone has to keep you from doing something stupid." He laughed. It felt good to laugh. The next morning, Hanno lifted off from Station Orbis 7. The crowds watched in silence as the ship rose, its hull glowing with colors that had no name in any language. It hung in space for a moment, as if saying goodbye, and then it leaped forward and vanished into the endless black. Tejo sat in the core chamber, surrounded by the warmth of his ship and the presence of his family. The galaxy stretched out before them, full of danger and wonder and possibility. The universe had called this ship worthless. It had called humans primitive. It had underestimated them both. Now it would have to learn a new lesson. Some things that seemed broken were not broken at all. They were just waiting for the right person to believe in them. And sometimes, the ones who seemed weakest were the ones who changed everything. Hanno flew on, carrying its crew toward tomorrow. The stars were waiting.